Good. Happy Tuesday to everybody.
Yeah, good old happy Tuesday. It is, we're a full-on spring now. We're in May. Race season is upon us. It is May 5th, the year 2026, and welcome everybody. You listen to the Crushing Iron Podcast. This is episode 926.
926, yeah, and man, you know, at this time of year, I mean, yeah, I'm getting outside a little bit more and everything like that, but you're fighting that winter blues, and now it's starting to get nice and sunny, but man, this wind up here the last few days has been insane, dude.
Dude, we had the same thing last week. We haven't had nearly as much this week. It's raining in 40 here again, so that's whatever. But yeah, it's, it's the Midwest. It's windy. It's still worth it though, right?
It's like a blessing, but I it's just, man, you really got to fight it.
It's a rude awakening. Seriously, like it's kind of a rude awakening for people. Like I mentioned this in my weekly email yesterday that a lot of times people in the off season, right? But the fall, winter season, they're inside so much they get a little kind of lazy with their posture and strength, and they kind of start the year out a little flimsy, maybe not quite as firm as they thought. Because listen, you can be fit and flimsy, right? I think we see that all the time, and that's I know that's not huge right now, but it's something I know people are aware of. Like, you see somebody that's incredibly thin, right? Maybe even too thin, and you think, oh man, they must be like really healthy or in shape, and that's not necessarily the case, right? They could be just like undernourished and not fed enough and completely weak, right? Probably can't even run 800. But so you can be both fit and flimsy, and I do, like, you see that a ton this time of year. People just get lazy with their posture and they don't do enough, and they're going from pool swimming to open water. Totally different. They're going from indoor training to outdoor, and not only is it kind of like a shock to the system for like the just being outside, but like you said, like you're getting wind, and you're just it's not like a smooth reentry, like unless you're one of those people who likes to perfectly plan your kind of reentry to outside training, or like you head out for your first outside run in a few weeks and you're straight into a headwind. And it's just, if you figure out how to force everything, but you're also, maybe a little bit flimsy here and there with your, overall durability and posture. And yeah, it's okay. It's a rude awakening, but listen, like, if you don't have a race, in the next week, you got time to change it. But yeah, wind is, we've had this poll before, but most people would choose hills over wind any day of the week.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's ironic or not, but it's coincidental, I guess, that I happened to click on, I was going to say Lionel Richie, but Lionel Sanders,
Richie. Hey, listen, to be fair, they've both won the same amount of Ironman World Championships.
Oh, jeez. His first video since whatever, now he's back with his old coach again. And first thing he said on there was, I think I'm going to start training outside. It's just different. Because there's actual resistance right when you get in. So, like, he's just like, man, he goes back and forth.
He freaking lives in Tucson. Like, you can train outdoors all the time. Like, there's literally no reason to be inside until it gets to, until you're in like June, July, and August, and it's like 130 when you wake up every day. But dude, it's so true. Like, I don't think people, like, really take into account like the amount of, the degrading, right, of strength that you're not necessarily aware of that happens from, fall and winter, especially if you just completely ignore, strength training. Like, I'm a fan of strength training, not to where you're like skipping other things, but as more of a supplement and accessory, to creating more stability and able to hold posture better. And we talk about it a ton, how much extra stress there is and outside. I was even having this conversation with an athlete talking about like their lower back was hurting, and I mentioned this just from, again, like there's a pool swimming and open water swimming. They're completely different sports in my opinion. But what I've also found with athletes over the last, not just years, but like, forever, is that, a lot of times poor bike fit, people blame having a poor bike fit lower back pain on having a poor bike fit. But in reality, if you do a lot of pool swimming and then you go on and put a wetsuit and then you hop in the lake or the ocean or the river, whatever it is, and you do your race and you're starting to sight, a lot of people sight like a ton every other stroke almost. All that like arching of your back puts an enormous amount of strain on your lower back. And then you hop on the bike and you go the other direction, right, to be aero, and like you're getting all these, kind of lower back issues. It's more of a swim problem, right, that gets blamed on the bike fit, just like kind of the run. Like, over biking tends to get blamed on, I need more run volume, I need more track workouts, and like really just over biked. All these little things add up, and there's just these small, like, like you were talking about referencing the Lionel Sanders video, is there's so much extra stress and resistance. You get soft, right? Over the fall, the winter, and the early spring, we get soft. Like you hop on the trainer and you do your intervals, and a lot of people put it in erg mode. You don't have to think, you just force it. But then you get outside and you got to like choose what gear. You got to handle, right? You got to stop. You got to corner. You got to weave. You got to change gears again. You got to sit up. You got to get back down. You got to hold your core tight. Like all these different things, and then you got to try to hold and maintain power. I just think, again, like we talk about it probably once every 2 or 3 months this time of year, but there's so much extra stress to be found outside. And guess what? That's where we race, right? Same thing with going from like pool to open water. It's night and day. It's completely night and day. It's like going from, the treadmill to trail running. I think it's something that we've referred to it before as kind of like how different things are. And it's a lot of added stress. And I think people, again, like in the early part of the year, tend to blame, fitness or, their training on just the fact that they've gotten a little bit, lazy and a little bit flimsy the last 8 to 12 weeks, and you enter the year and you got increasing temperatures, right? You're going from, you're 45 one day, 80 the other. You got 25, 30 mile an hour winds, and then they got the humidity and the dew point, then you're outside. Like it's a big stress dump. And it's not just like the sayings, like it's just like riding a bike. It's not, right? Just like doing 2,000 in the pool, right? We get to stop every 25 yards isn't the same as doing 2K straight in the open water. A lot more stress. You gotta be a lot more fit. It's just harder on you, right? Yes, you have the constant pedaling on the trainer, right? You don't get breaks, which is again good for fitness, right? But fitness can be degraded by just like fitness. You go run in 90-degree heat compared to 50-degree heat. Well, you're still showing up with the same fitness, but the environmental conditions that you have to withstand during that race are gonna eat away and degrade the fitness that you have. That's the same thing with all the other outside factors, whether you're hopping into open water swim that's got chop, or a current. Same thing if you're doing a bike ride with lots of wind, tailwind, then you got headwind, then you got crosswind. Even a crosswind, right? Like the amount of energy you've got to put out to keep your bike upright, and the added stress that you have just by battling it is, it's the significance of it is obviously very dependent on your ability to handle your bike or how much exposure you've had to it, but it all adds up, right? And I think that's this time of year is about just getting out and getting good exposure to certain things. So when you go to race day, it's just not a complete shock.
Yeah. I was thinking back to, I totally kind of understand where Lionel's coming from. Like sometimes you think you got it down, and then you go race or whatever, and it's like, damn, I really, sometimes it works, and then because I do that kind of shit too, where you're like, I'm going back to the drawing board or whatever, and but like this spring, I kind of always feel like I've been the master of easing in or the master of transition or whatever, but I'm big on that, like I don't like to. I guess I like to keep building confidence in a manageable way. So I don't like to just like, I'm going outside today. I'm going to start it off with 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever, So like what I'll do is I do a lot of treadmill and a lot of trainer over the winter. And as the spring starts coming into the marginal season of getting out there, earlier for running, but for cycling, I'll split it up. I do that all the time. Like I'll just start on the treadmill for about 20 minutes or whatever, and then I'll go run for 25, 30 outside or whatever. And same with the bike. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's like, it seems manageable to me, so I don't overwhelm it. But it's almost like I can do it a little more often too, and it's kind of just biting off chunks of things that I can deal with rather than. And I've done it reverse too or whatever. But even like with the swimming, I'll kind of warm up with a rower for like 10 minutes or something, and then get inside, get in the water just to get things like that. But I think that's kind of, for me, it's kind of important. I think it's kind of paying off because it kind of gives me a little bit of, because I think there's so much benefits for treadmill and for trainers. It's just different, like you're saying, it's kind of, you can kind of get lazy, but you can also kind of work on things, but then you get outside and it's like you're a, sort of a victim of the elements, and you have to deal with whatever's coming at you. And, running into 30-mile-an-hour winds is totally different story, or biking into it. And if I don't have to go 2 hours, it's like, all right, I can get used to this a little bit more. And that's exactly what's happening. For me, I find that kind of stuff really valuable, is to just ease in. I could write a book called The Master of Ease In, because I like to do that with races.
You said you wrote it or you read it?
I could write a book probably.
Oh, so you could write. I was like, I've never heard of that book, but it sounds interesting.
Transition from bed to the coffee machine or whatever. There's a lot of transitions in life.
There are a lot of transitions in life. I mean, you got T1 and T2 for one, but no, I mean, I think, and that's, I think, one of the problems that we have when we hit this time of year, when more of your stuff is outside, right? And a lot of people are getting closer to, maybe their bigger race of the year. And so, let's say you're racing in, July, and we're already here in May. So you probably hit like your peak block, or you're about to hit it. And so, intensity and or volume is increasing, and then you're heading outside. So it's kind of like triple stress. You got intensity, you got duration, you got outside stress. If you've gone from treadmill to outside, it's more stress and pounding on your body, And so I think it's important, like if you're about to get out there, like just make your outside stuff not structured, but just keep it aerobic and just focus on good posture, good form, like being able to hold these things for long periods of time. Like that alone is going to be the stressor, right? I mean, yes, you have people say, oh, my first outdoor ride was great. I couldn't wait to be outside. Yes, totally get it. But they also say, man, I forgot like how much I have to use my core, or my bike fit doesn't feel very good. I'm like, we're just now figuring out, and we're in May, not quite, but that's like half the year. Like the race season is short for most of us. It's like May to September. It's not year long. We don't have like 8 to 9 months. Like these are things that you've got to really take advantage of. The longer you put them off, the harder the project is going to be to fix it, and like if you've got a race that's in open water, then you better go find some open water to swim in, because the likelihood is 9 times out of 10, you're going to get in the open water and you're going to realize you're not quite as in good of a shape as you thought. And same thing with cycling. Same thing with like if you've been on the treadmill, you go out and do these runs, like these things, these things add up. Because yes, I'm right there with you, right? And I'm, as a coach and an athlete, tons of value in the pool, tons of value in the trainer, tons of value on the treadmill, right? It can be precise, it can be focused, right? You can just dial in the intervals, dial in the watts, dial in the intensity, and not have to worry about other things. But on the other side of that is if you become too dependent on that and too comfortable in that, and you're not just using it for the specific, right, which is to control things, then when it is time to get outside, you won't know how to control things because you haven't been. And I think that's something that you got to get. Again, I was an athlete I've got doing Ironman Jacksonville. He skipped his swim yesterday to do it open water. I said, hey, love getting open water. It's very, very important. But let's try to add those on top of our pool swims, because pool is for fitness, right? Open water is more for comfort and strength, right? Is that they're just even the best open water swimmers on the planet who do like the 10Ks from the Olympics, they do 95% of their swimming in the pool, because it's just a great way to control things, have your rest intervals, right? Same thing on the bike, right? You just put your head down. You have to worry about stoplights or stop signs or other cars or turns or potholes in the road, or, the whole added stress of just getting your bike ready for the morning and pumping up the tires and getting your, Vari-Light on and making sure your bottles are ready. There's not 15 minutes right there. You just hop on the trainer, bust it out, and move on with your day. Again, huge value. But you also need to get, accustomed to what it's going to be like going outside. Maybe your fit is different. Maybe you're not as comfortable on it. Maybe maybe your saddle has dropped a little bit. Move. Again, like you see, even small things like your bottle setup might work perfectly for you inside with your bike completely locked in.
Yeah,
where you don't
table
have
right
to be
next to you.
Exactly. And then you got people trying to reach for their bottle. They don't even know how to do it. It's like their first venture outside is like race day. Like, I can't tell you how bad of an idea that is. I can't tell you. Absolutely horrible idea. You're going to grab it, you're going to drop it, or even worse, right? You're going to swerve over. Like, you got to practice these things. Even if you want, to practice them on the trainer, right? Be focused and try to grab it as if you were outside, not just, sitting up, texting on your phone and, sharing videos on TikTok and then grabbing your bottle. Like, treat it like it was a race. Like I was telling some of the swimmers at the Open Water Clinic this weekend, like every 400 of the last like 2 to 3 weeks before you head into a swim, on some of your main sets, like make that fourth 25 of the 100 sight. Get used to because listen, it takes extra energy to sight. Like, it's not natural to pick your head up out of the water. If it was faster and natural, you would see people in the Olympics in the pool do it. Right. But it's not. It's how low can we keep our head? So just think about it over the course of, 1,500 meters, 2.4 miles, how many times you have to put in effort, right? Your lower back, your upper back, and your arms to press your head up. It could even be like, back of the neck pain, right? Like from not practicing sighting. And if you're not, and like most people, right, you're not really good at sighting. You don't sight with your eyes, you sight with your trachea or your collarbone. Like, you lift your head that far out of the water, the higher you lift it, the more strain you have on your lower back, right? And that's how much effort you are to raise yourself up versus swimming yourself forward. Like, all these things are again, like we can't just show up on race day and with the fitness that we have and feel like the fitness is going to 100%, come out on race day and express itself. There's all kinds of outside factors. And the more you ignore, right, or avoid those outside stressors, the worse it's going to be on race day. And you're going to have a huge, again, degradation in fitness. You're going to be more stressed. I think a lot of times people understand and know that stress, right, is going to be there on race day, so they just continue to avoid it in general, right? It's kind of just like you're just completely in denial. I know the open water is going to freak me out. I know biking out sky is going to freak me out, but, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'll be good, or I'll get out a few times race week. Like, dude, rolling around the parking lot ain't going to cut it. Swimming, going in waiting. Yeah, like, dude, that's just not gonna cut it. Like, wetsuit in the pool is just you being really hot. Being really hot. Yeah, you're dialed into your wetsuit in the pool, right? Wetsuits are made for open water, not for the pool.
Yeah, 15 yards, I see people at a Madison hotel. Like, a new wetsuit, I got to try it out. It's the day before.
They got to feel it really. They got to feel it a little bit. It's perfect. Like, strap my shoulders.
Seriously, like 4 links, and they'll be like, yeah, I think this is good.
Yeah, we're all set. It's like going into a shitty bike field. You get on, and you're like, yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah, you look pretty good. And you're like, oh, dude, this feels amazing. And like, you've been pedaling for 90 seconds. Right? You're not even getting close to knowing if it's a good fit or not. Like, again, these are, we get it. Like, it's a complicated sport, and you don't know what you don't know. But these are all things you got to know, right? Like, there's so many things that can affect your race that it isn't. Right? It for better or for worse, it isn't just swim, bike, and run. Right? Because if that was the case, you could just swim in the pool, bike in a stationary bike, and run on the treadmill, and show up on race day, and none of it would matter. Right? And no outside factors would matter. It'd be a perfect 1-to-1 ratio going from pool to open water. I mean, there's like, again, like there was like over this last weekend at the open water clinic, there was what I would call texture on the water. Like we're not talking rollers. We're just talking texture, right? Just a little bit of splash in there. It was pretty windy and everyone thought it was chop. I was like, this isn't chop. This is just a little bit of texture, right? So it's kind of like your Bob Ross painting. Okay. It's just a little bit of texture here and there. And it was affecting a lot of people in a very significant fashion. And the same thing goes for like wind. Like, you know, we've used this example before, but when you and I used to ride the lab all the time, it was just always steady wind. 10, 15, 20, 25 mile an hour, headwind, crosswind, tailwind, you name it, you got it. And then we went and both raced Muncie, and everyone complained about the wind and how strong it was. And we were like, there was wind?
Yeah, right.
Right. Like we didn't even realize there was any because we had conditioned ourselves to be, you know, acclimated to and exposed to wind so much that it just didn't bother us. You know, it's like another analogy could be, you know, when you're in your house and the thermostat's at, 70 and in the winter, you know, it feels a lot different, right? It feels warm, and then 70 does. And then you go in the summertime and you're outside and it's 100 degrees, you're out there and you walk in the house 70, you're freezing. You're like, oh my God, it's freezing here. What is it, 70? Like these, like the more you expose yourself to an element, the difference, right? When the pendulum swings the other direction, like it's that much more dramatic. But if you can expose yourself to it, you don't notice it. And if you don't notice it, you really don't stress about it. And that's just why it's so important. Like, again, like we can make as big of a deal as we want to about race intervals and race intensity and, you know, making sure you hit everything on the point, but like go get your ass outside, right? And do these as much as possible as you can, you know, go swim in the pool Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then on the Sunday morning, you know, go do your long run, then go open water swim, right? You don't have to make it hard or do intervals, just go swim for 30 minutes straight.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like things like that are just, it's a huge value add that I think we just overlook way too often.
Yeah, I mean, I've said for a long time, it's like, and plus what'll happen is, as it starts warming up, the air conditioning comes on, and then that even creates a different level of variance in your brain, because it's like, now it feels hotter than it really is outside. So one of the things I remember, even if you're going to, like, people do this a lot, and I think it's good, is just to even ride your trainer outside or in the garage. Like I did that a lot back in Nashville, and it would just be scorching hot in there, but like I was at least getting used to the heat part of it. You know what I mean? The fresh air and the heat. That's a big piece of it, because I always feel like the first time you get outside, it's like your lungs get overwhelmed with real air and all this kind of stuff, and it sort of takes it out of you a little bit more. But yeah, it's it is wild, man. I mean, you know, I talk about like when I'm in a good plunging group, for example, that's just, to me, I don't know if it has any like quote unquote tangible benefits. Maybe it does, but it's just sort of like creating that. It's almost like breaking out of the matrix a little bit. And I think that we have to do that sometimes, you know, just sort of shake ourselves, you know. Even I was just thinking about how I was talking about I do half my treadmill run or whatever. Sometimes I'll get on there and I'll just start on there and be like, screw this, man. I'm just going to go outside. It's sort of like creating that, like I said, the transition, or just sort of at least getting, you know, your comfort zone a little bit, but then just breaking right out of it and doing something that you may not want to do, but I think it's always like, I feel like that's what triathlon training is. It's, you know, sort of like just, you know, kind of cracking the walls of the matrix and just breaking out of your comfort zone all the time. And then, like you're saying, man, it gets easier to do just about anything, you know. And that's like, for me right now, just jumping in this cold ass lake every day, it's getting me used to just being, I remember last year at Wisconsin, I think the swim race temperature was like 68 or something like that. And I just remember thinking about how, man, this feels really kind of warm and comfortable, you know, like, but back in the day when I wasn't used to that sort of stuff, coming up from, you know, Nashville, where the water was a lot warmer all the time, it felt cold at like 74. So it's just, I do think it is about kind of exposing yourself to different elements and different, you know, terrains and different kind of just, that's why this thing with the wind up here, I'm like kind of bitching about it, but the more I get into it, the more it just doesn't seem as big of a deal. And I know, like, if I'm used to, riding into 35 mile an hour winds, that 5 mile an hour wind is real, like you're saying, is going to even, it's not even going to touch me. I mean, plus you get, even if it's not windy, you're creating wind. So I remember these types of things when you go out and it's not even windy and you think it's windy just because there's wind in your face, so that's like a real thing. So like add, 30 miles an hour to that in your face. And it's just like, I don't know. It's a love-hate thing, right? You kind of want to put yourself in terrible conditions. And, like, it's like, I like to run around here because nobody's out when it's raining. And that's when I like to run, because that way I don't have to deal with people or, people walking dogs or whatever. So I'll purposely try to go out in these situations when it's like super hot or rainy or windy or whatever the case may be. As much as I hate it, I know it's, that we talk about it all the time, but like training is training, that's why when we used to ride the trace all the time, it was like, we'd go 3-4 hours or whatever. And we just always busted up the hills. It wasn't like a planned exercise, but you wouldn't race like that, but you want to train in situations that kind of create the ability to overcome things. So that's what we just did, and I think that's what the outdoors, offers all the time, whether it's, trail running or whatever the case may be. It's just creating situations that aren't going to be necessarily exactly like a race, but it's going to be tougher, or it's going to, create a problem solving situation or whatever the case may be. It's like nothing like knowing you're going to run into the wind for like a mile, and how do you relax? Because that's relaxing is the biggest piece of this, because it's like you're so tense, and then all of a sudden you're not even performing. So that's one of the things I really, like you're saying, run super easy or zone 2 or whatever, just keep it chill, but always just try to be able to relax and accept what it is, because the minute you try to overpower it, that's when things go to shit.
I mean, and you think about and again, this isn't every triathlete, but it's a lot, right? How easily some triathletes can be knocked off their game. I got a leaky goggle, right? Or my lane's taken, or I had to wait for a little bit, or I had to share a lane, or my Zwift wasn't working today, or my trainer was giving me fits, or forgot to change my battery, or my AirPods, weren't charged. I couldn't listen to music today. I'm like, these are all cries for comfort. And you see it all the time with how controlled, right? So many of the things that we do have become is like, those are just cries for comfort. Like, there's no reason you still can't get your session. So like, we've become so soft in so many ways, and not paying it. Like it's like we've started to pay way, like our focus on certain aspects of training, embracing, and being able to compete at the best level possible. Like, we've shifted those in the complete opposite. Like, we've shifted towards, comforts and control. And on race day, there is no control. Right? You're not in control of the wind. You're not in control of the rain. You're not in control of the heat. You're not in control of any of the other 2,500 people that are out there with you. Right? Like, you're just not. You're not in control of the water. There would be waves. There could be craft. There could be what you name it. There could be it. Then you got volunteers. Right? So, and none of it. Guess what? None of it's going to be comfortable. None of it. And like, again, I think we just continue to desensitize ourselves and control everything. And then we get thrown in to, it's like, you spend 9 months out of the year going to see, the Symphony, and then race day, you're thrown in the mosh pit, like Rage Against the Machine. Like, that's the difference. You're sitting in your seat, you're nice and relaxed. You got people walking the aisles. You got your, got your support. You got your brochure. You're watching a nice, calm. Everything's good. This is a lovely evening. I'm so glad that that my spouse brought me to the Symphony, and
like
then the next, because it's not your idea probably.
No, I like this analogy.
Yeah, right. And then the next week, you get front row freaking tickets to Rage Against the Machine, and you get thrown in the mosh pit. Like, it's completely, dude, this is what we signed up for. Like, we signed up for this. We get to do the distance, we get to the disciplines, but everything else is not on us. So we have to be prepared to the highest level and degree of preparedness. And, you know, even just something as different from the water being a different color can completely set people off, you know, or that person's too close to me. Kind of like I said about the wind, like everybody thinks everyone's too close to them during a race. No, they're just whizzing by me. They're at least like just 2 inches from my elbow. And you get like a rear view cam shot and they're like, dude, they were like 6 feet away. Right? Because like everybody's on such high alert because their stress level is so significant because they're not used to doing any of it outside in real life. You know, I was just reading an article yesterday about the lifespan is decreasing because people are so fucking lonely because of, you know, social media and AI. Like people are choosing to have conversations with freaking a robot versus like going outside and doing things. Like we're more oftentimes than not, we choose to be inside and we choose to stare at a screen. We don't choose to get outside and do things. And then we wonder why we panic. And then we wonder why we freak out. And then we wonder why our stress level is so high. Like if you don't think that has a direct, immediate, and noticeable impact to your heart rate, then you're crazy. I mean, heart rate sky high through the roof already when you go to a race because you're nervous, right? It's a big deal. It's a big race I've been training for. There's a lot of people around. I'm not used to being around a lot of people. You know, you probably got a little bit of caffeine in your system. You're tossing your wetsuit on, you know, 90 minutes early. You're rolling up to start. You're jittery. And all you're probably doing is thinking about all the things that can go wrong. That's all we hear about. You know, everything that goes wrong. You know, somebody, you know, died here and this happened to somebody. Like you don't hear about all the, you know, days where people like overcome things and like just do what they need to do to get the job done. And so we just freak out and we panic. And he starts the race, like heart rate's already high. And then you got all these people and you're like, God, this guy totally swam over me. And you get like the, you know, the aerial view and you're like, dude, like I don't think anybody touched you. You know, but like you're just on like such high alert for everything. You want your own space, but guess what? You don't get it. Like this might be a tough lesson for a lot of you, but when you start your race, sorry, but you're in there with 2,500 people who are probably just as selfish as you are, who only care about themselves. You aren't guaranteed your own space. You're guaranteed an entry to the race, period. You will not get space in the swim, no matter how much of a rolling start they give. You will not get extra space. People will swim next to you. People will touch you, and it will be okay. On the bike, people will pass you. Some might be close, some might be far, but people will pass you. There will not be perfect volunteers. They are volunteers. They are not paid professional aid station concierge service attendants. They are from the local senior home or the Boy Scout troop or trying to get some extra credit for school. Okay? They're just there handing out bottles. They don't know how. There's going to be problems, right? Sometimes Ironman isn't going to have the right amount of ice or Coke, or it's going to be in a different spot, or somebody's going to hold on to it. Take a deep breath. They're volunteers, right? You might take a wrong turn. There might be traffic. There might be a cop who let one extra car through coming through. Something might not be marked perfect. Like, listen, this is just like life. But we show up to these races regardless of distance and expect like to be able to race in our own bubble and then freak out and stress and go and like straight off our rocker because something very tiny inconvenienced our special perfect day. And I'm just telling you, like, that's not what you pay for. You pay for an entry and an opportunity, period. It's your choice whether you can train in a bubble and expect to be, you know, have your own little, you know, bubble type experience. And I'll tell you right now, it's going to be popped. Probably before you even make it, you know, into the water, it's going to be popped. And so like the more you can stress yourself out, right, which I know seems like counterintuitive. We focus so much on, you know, stressing ourselves out and with training, right, with stimulus, with intensity, or with duration, like we crave it. Oh, coach, give me more intensity. I can handle more. Give me longer. I'm like, you want that? But then when it comes and I'm like, all right, well, how about this? I'll give you more intensity once you go do your next 2 rides outside. I think I'm good. I got my setup over here. It's like if you want to add stress, add it, but add it to also in a way that's going to show you like what you can actually do on race day. You can't take treadmill miles per hour. You can't take your pool 100-yard splits. You can't take your power on the bike inside and take it outside. It's not irrelevant, but it's more irrelevant than it is relevant because it's completely different. And so if you want to add stress and you want to be race ready, then get your ass outside and do these things to stress yourself out. And again, scenarios that aren't heightened, right? That don't have a lot riding on them, to get ready, because the longer you avoid them, the more stressful it's going to be, right? And that's not what you want. Take the time to expose yourself to these things and do them so you know what it feels like. Like I remember, this is, forever ago, but when you and I were doing Ironman Louisville that year, and listen, no, this is not that year. This is before I got sober. So it was like 14, 15 years ago. I remember I would go to the track at like 2 p.m. to do my runs. Mm-hmm. Not because it was, because I was doing like some long track workout, because I was trying to get myself prepared to what it was going to feel like coming off the bike in that Louisville heat. And to have like the increased heat coming off the track, and it'd be like 110, 115 degrees. I'm just trying to like survive it. Like little things like that. Again, I'm not advocating that every week, because that's also a stress you have to recover from, right? But still, like, look for these ways that apply, like decision making. Like, again, people get decision fatigue, like we talked about last week, and precision, fatigue. But you won't be so fatigued out of the gate because of all the other outside stresses if you practice them and make it a point to expose yourself to these things that are very, very critical to perform your best on race day.
Yeah, I've really been in this for a while, but like lately, this concept of the mindless mind, and what we're talking about is that, in a way, where you're basically operating. You get outside and you get used to it. It's sort of through repetition, and you feel it, and you're used to it. And it's, like we, back in the day when we'd swim out at the lake all the time, and we'd have, 15, 20 people there in the morning, and you'd line us up, and we'd be in groups, and we'd be dealing with contact and all that kind of stuff. And, all summer, and I know that's not possible for a lot of people, but that's just one example where we were training for the open water start at Madison, and, that I took, that one piece out of the equation for me. Like, the contact piece was not a stressor. It was just almost like, just operating without analytical thought. It was just something that happened. My body was so used to it. And that's what I think a lot of times I talk about RPE a lot, and how I feel and my relative, exertion and that sort of thing. But I also think it's kind of about getting your body used to just understanding how to flow and not be over analytical with every, it's sort of like, oh, that person hit me. And, and then that just takes you way off your game. But if you're sort of used to that, you just kind of like acknowledge it. It's sort of like just acknowledge the thought without reacting. And that's just such a big piece of this puzzle. Like you're saying, you get off the bike at Louisville, and it's like, it can really smack you in the face. But if you're used to it, if you put yourself through that and experience what that feels like, then it's just a thing. It's not like a overwhelming, mind shift. You just kind of acknowledge that, okay, yeah, it's hot. I knew it was going to be hot, whatever the case may be, or whatever. So like, that's, I think back to too, when we used to train up on the trace, and like I was saying, you just bust up hills and things like that. Well, that got us in a spot for Wisconsin, or for any race that has a lot of hills. It's like, if you're used to getting up and, like we would just go hammer them. So like by the end of that race, even if it was a hard climb, it's sort of normal. It's just like, well, I just got to do this again. It isn't like, oh God, I can't do this anymore. You're just kind of used to it, and that's, not thinking about it is such a big piece of that puzzle, man. It's whatever, getting used to being an arrow or something like that, and your back, sort of. I really try to not give like discomfort space in my brain. It's just sort of like you just you just kind of acknowledge it and let it go, and whether it's cold water or whatever the case may be, or bumping into people, or your goggles, like last year my goggles fogged up, but I was kind of used to it a little bit, and it was really pissed me off, but I was able to stay. That could have really screwed me up worse than it did, but I felt like I was sort of trained for it. I mean, maybe not the greatest. I probably could have swam with opaque goggles and practiced that, but that I haven't taken it to that level yet. It's sort of like, but it's funny how I remember thinking about that. Like, we talked about this a long time ago. We were, you kind of like, for lack of a better word, was sighting, right? Like, I feel like we do have an internal compass on some level. So like, how we used to do this, I think at the lake, we'd try to, the buoy would be maybe 100 yards out or whatever like that. And we'd kind of try to swim there without sighting. Mm-hmm. We'd keep our arms on either side of it and try to just keep that path. And I think there's some real beauty in the ability, because it's sort of like, that's one of the things I think about a lot when I'm swimming is that, like if I am just cruising along, I look up and I'm like, shit, I'm kind of offline here. Rather than try to like do a 90-degree turn to get back in line, I just kind of chill my way back towards the the line I want to be on or whatever. And I just think practice and stuff like that is so huge because like the last thing you want to be doing is out in the water getting mad at everybody. You know what I mean? And just because something happened, and it's not easy to avoid a lot of times because some crazy shit happens out there, but if you're just calm with, you expect these things to happen and then instead of overreacting to everything, it's like these thoughts pass without engaging them or judging or whatever. And you just stay in your game,
Yeah. And it's funny, right? Like you bring up both like the swimming and the cycling, like that's when you hear about the most like confrontations. Mm-hmm. You don't hear about, oh, this guy ran way too close to me. No. You don't hear that.
Those are the pros that cut off the corners and shit like that.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, you're out for the run and you feel like you're safe and you're not stressed because the race is almost over and like nothing bad can happen. So if something does happen that like you're not a fan of, like you're fine. But on the bike, you're high alert, right? So close to me. Like he's way too close. And then the swim, like, oh, this guy was like, couldn't stop tickling my feet. And I got kicked or I got swam over and like, it's like the higher stress, like the worse the response. I mean, this is like just how it is with life, right? You're super stressed or you hadn't sleep a lot and something happens, you bite somebody's head off for like no reason, right? That's stress, right? But like going back to the open water thing, like back in when you used to train Anderson Road Beach a couple times a week, I mean, like the amount of work that we did or that I had you guys do to prepare for, and here's the thing, right? It's like people should still do this. Like, so we would do, again, we wouldn't just go to the open water and float, right? We went to open water to work, right? So like we would do, a beach start and you would run and I'd set up cones. You'd like swim out to a buoy and, you have the wake buoys and it might be like easy, like fartlicks, like easy, hard from buoy to buoy. And then you swim straight in, you get a sight right off the cones. You swim into shore, you get up and then you sprint down the beach. Heart rate's racing, heart rate, and then you sprint back in. Like it is absolute race mode. You're working on entries, you're working on exits, you're working on sightings, you have to sight your way out, you get a sight with the buoys, and you're doing it at race pace, right? You're very uncomfortable. There are times I had you guys just like you said, swim out to the buoy without looking, right? Make you focus while you're swimming, because most people, they just start swimming. I mean, they just like swim to swim. And then they wonder why they end up swimming 1.9 miles instead of 1.2. It might not be because your pace is so slow. It might just show up because you swam 0.7 miles extra because you can't swim straight, right? And I always tell people in open water, like swim and sight with the buoy, and then if you're not sighting, pretend like the buoy is in between your arms, right? Just have something that's visual to kind of go off of. And then, same thing goes for just like stressing yourself out. Like dive in or fill your goggles up with water and then swim for a bit and try to practice clearing them. Swim out there with your wetsuit on, unzip it, and try to get it back together. Like, again, like I don't understand why people don't practice these things that freak them out when you can, right? They're preventable, and even if they aren't preventable, they are fixable without stressing, right? People don't practice how to change their flat tire, and it ruins their race, or they don't carry anything. That's on you, right? You can blame the potholes and debris on the road, but guess what? Learn how to change a tire, okay? And same thing, like there's just so many things. I remember sometimes I'd have you guys fill up your goggles with water and then sprint in without being able to see, just like all is I can, because it's still a controlled environment, right? It wasn't a race. And then some of those clinics we'd have like 20, 25 people there. So we're shoulder to shoulder, right? You're all friends, like, rubbing is racing. And it went from like a race to like a competition. And so you got your juices flowing, you're trying to work hard, you're swimming hard, you're sighting, and like you do all that and you're like, dude, race day is going to be a breeze, right? Like it was nothing. Like the contact you felt in race day was probably nothing compared to what we did at open water clinics. Because there are also a lot of times I'd have the slower people start first and the faster people go second. Mm-hmm. So the slower people could get used to what it feels like to get, swam, touched or around, And so it'd be like, how many people can we get around the buoy to corner it and then come out? Like these are all things that you can practice. Like, yes, I get it. Access to open water is a huge challenge for a lot of people, but you can find a way to do it, right? And when you get there, again, don't do some work. Put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. Same thing with riding a bike, right? Like, don't go pick the local greenway. Or a parking lot, get out on the road, right? You need to feel, again, make it at a time of day that's not heavily trafficked, obviously, but get out on the road. Because then once you start to do it, you're going to gain confidence. And the next time you go right outside, you're not going to be nervous because you've already done it. But the more kind of resistance you present, the stress level rises. And then the response becomes even greater. Yeah. And again, like those are the starts of the race. Right? The swim and the bike are what get you to the run. That's why people are usually, they're not chill when they run because they're in pain and they're like debating their life choices, but they're not stressed, right? And they're not nearly as stressed and moody and tempered, or with, like big swings and how their temperament is than they are on the swim and the bike. It's because their stress level is so high. And if you listen, like the amount of extra fatigue and extra, energy expenditure it takes to just have that stress, like that tension and that mentality, like these things are, it's a huge deal. And I think, again, like the more you can do to kind of subtly, remove that from, your obstacle on race day, the better off you are. But we have to, I think, be a little more purposeful in our preparation, right? And I think we are getting more and more and more away from that than we are closer to it, right? We're just, asking Google to give us our training plan, and then we know how long to swim and bike and run, but we don't know anything else. And we're actually becoming becoming so much more less informed than we really should be, because we're not doing our own due diligence and not doing our own research to figure out what I should be doing or what I not should be doing, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Like these are all very, very important things that you've got to focus on, and again, take the time to do it, and you will really thank yourself on race day.
Yeah, and I mean, like, making yourself uncomfortable or practice being uncomfortable, that is such a huge piece of it, man. It's like, but also, confidence, it's just when we go to run camp, and I've done, that we run that marathon or whatever in those hills out there, and, on my long, like up in training, maybe like for 7 miles or something like that, but be able to do that, but it's but it's working hard, right? Like you think back to that swimming we used to do out there. I remember it was my first one, and we would do that. I mean, it was like you said, I mean, that one cone thing was like 1,000 yards of basically running down the beach and sprinting in the water and kicking at, like getting out. It was like 1,000 straight yards or whatever. And I used to hate that one, by the way, but it was like, when you get done, you're kind of like, I remember asking you once, it was like, dude, cause I think we'd go like 3 times a week. And,
yeah,
I remember asking, I was like, man, we're swimming like, 1,500, 1,700, but it's just like legit work, for the hour in the morning. And I'm like, I don't know, man, are we getting enough? Yeah. And of course we were, probably doing some where we were going a little bit longer, whatever. And I was just kind of looking in I think it was the pathetic triathlon. They're always like, how far do I need to swim before an Ironman? And a lot of people are just like, 3,000 is what I do every time or whatever. It's like 3,000 continuous. That's what you need.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of going, wow, man, that's interesting because while it may be, I'm sure it has worked for people, but like I think about it in terms of doing things that make you uncomfortable, though. It's like how much that translates. So we got into, Madison. I had a good swim with an open water, and I don't know I don't remember swimming much more than 3,000, but we used to do some crazy work, and it's just the comfort value of being able to get used to that kind of stuff, or like you said, riding the hills at the trace, and I don't know, or that last thing we did at the track where it was like 13 miles all descending in the heat.
In the heat. I mean, in the heat. Yeah, I mean, like you nailed it when you're talking about, because we would come in sometimes 3 days a week, like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And yeah, you'd swim a little over, 2,000 every time, but sometimes it'd be 3,000, but it'd be like 55 minutes to an hour of like constant sprinting or swimming hard. And you're not going to do that on race day, and so like you got the camps where like, hey, it's quality over quantity, man. Like give me an hour of, like just smashing myself. And that's the equivalent of like 3 hours easy. Okay, well, it's not, right? Like it's different. Like the stress might be the same, but the stimulus is not the same. But in regards to this analogy, it is similar, right? Because you guys are doing, again, such huge volume in open water, really, really hard. And then complementing with some pool sims, like when you went out to go swim 4,200 yards easy, it was like nothing. Because you're like, man, I'm used to like swimming, like being really out of breath and having to get up and sprint down the beach 200 meters and diving back in the water. Like, now I just got to like, swim with this big group of people and, move a few times and, I'm on my way. It was like, and again, like that's the opposite, right? We do a lot now to remove and protect ourselves from stress. And then race day is the stress, right? When it should be the opposite. You should do what you got to do to stress yourself, right? Outside of it, that way the race feels less stressful. We have it, a lot of people have it flipped. Race day should feel like very controlled and a huge opportunity to express your fullest fitness, but it's the opposite. A lot of people are so controlled and obsessed with comfort during training that they avoid all discomfort, and then that makes race day so uncomfortable and so stressful that they can't produce their best fitness. And so if you can just flip that kind of on its head and get back to it, you'd be better off, and that's just, like that workout I had you guys do, like that had nothing to do with fitness, right? It was 13 1-mile repeats on the track. It's like, 7 or 8 of us, heat of the day, black track, asphalt, hotter than fuck. I mean, it was so hot that day. But the goal was you had to negative split, right? You had to start off slow. So each mile you did, you had to stop, and you got, a minute rest in between. You could walk it out. It was about suffering, stress, and then being able to execute right under that stress. Like it wasn't like 13 by 1 mile is like some super secret Ironman workout. It wasn't because you're on the track. It was just a controlled environment to keep us close together. It was about the discomfort and the stress. And again, not like the physical, like joint stress, but just like the stress of the exposure to the elements and then still having to make good decisions. right? And still pace it. And then, and again, there was also competition there, right? Everybody kind of had their own, their own person, that they were trying to beat on race day. So it wasn't like you're there alone and you could just worry about yourself. You still wanted to, kind of beat, so-and-so or beat so-and-so. And so you had all the makings of, race day where people make these bad decisions. So it was about providing an opportunity to make mistakes outside of the race and then learn from them, and not just go into the race and make all the mistakes and then wonder why your race didn't go the way that it needed to go.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, that was, I think, close to, if not my longest run before Ironman. That was like a 13-mile, but it was a real intense, focused kind of thing where I just look at that as like training your mind to get to the edge and not go over it and just stay with it. And once you get there, to me, that's the muscle you have to build in this sport. Because it's sort of like, I may not have been like long run. And that was on me. I just wasn't into running like super long. I kind of was like, well, I did that a couple of times in training, 13, 14 miles. And I'd be like, I think I can, just hold on or whatever. Cause I was building up that muscle, like the ability to, that's what we did at the trace all the time, or going to the lab and just fighting through and knowing that your body can handle it. And I just think that's the thing that needs to get trained a lot more sometimes, is like getting to our edge. And everybody wants to push the top speed all the time, but it's like, can you get to the certain place where you can hang and then get your mind out of it and just let your body just be like, all right, I can handle this. So that, yeah.
There's, again, like it doesn't have to be the perfect example of the stuff that we've just given you, right? Everybody knows what's the most stressful piece of them or part for them on race day. Is it the swim? Is it the bike? Is it the run? And then what part of it? And then why? And then now what can I do to help alleviate that stress on race day? And then find opportunities, whether it's biking outside with a group, whether it's doing hard runs with a friend, whether it's finding open water. Find it, do it, apply it, and then relive it, and then do it again. Because it's gonna like the amount of people that are just, I think, showing up to these races, right, as like bucket listers, or I just saw it on Instagram and I haven't really done this, but I'm gonna show up and do it. It's like it's from sprint all the way to full. Like there's again trying to train for disciplines, and there's also training for the distance in the race. Two very different things, and you have to be prepared for it. So yeah, so as we close out, find ways and opportunities. What stresses you out. Find ways, to expose yourself to it. And even if it, again, find somebody to do it with you. Start small, right? Where there's riding around the neighborhood, and then getting on the trainer and doing the main set, and then you can do it longer, then you can venture on the roads. Same thing with a swim, go in first and just float for a bit and, do your thing. And, like you got to, like, I had a great story from, as we close out, like there's an athlete that I work with who did La Quinta 70.3 last year. And he's like very, very confident, very comfortable swimmer. Paddle boards a lot, lives close to the river, always would love open water swimming. And went into the race, and I remember seeing like 55 minutes swimming. I'm like, something happened. Something's not right. And so afterwards, he ended up having like a huge panic attack during the swim. Held on the kayak and then got back on and like just ripped the bike and the run off, but just hadn't. So he's avoided it ever since. And obviously, the longer you avoid things, the worse it gets. And he was like, I need to get the open water swim thing out of my head. I just don't know how to do it. And I was like, well, the first thing is, as most triathletes, like they feel like they have to have a plan, right? They have to have a plan when they go. And if they don't stick to that plan, then it's a failure. And I said, listen, just go to the water with no plan, period. You don't need a plan. You just need to get your wetsuit on and you need to go to the water And the first thing you need to do is just put your toes in. That's it. We're not looking to, swim 4 miles. We're just looking to swim and or just expose yourself. And, you might end up just leaving. And so he ended up saying, he was like, I took your advice and sat there on the edge with my feet and ankles in the water for a couple of minutes and splashed myself to realize that the water was no longer cold. Once I jumped in, I immediately knew that I was fine and decided to swim for a little bit just to get some more exposure. Ended up swimming like 1,000. Like there's all these little things we can do that just, again, we're in this day and age where we want everything right now. And that just might not be possible. It just might not be possible. And that's also okay. But that also makes people avoid it because we're impatient. Well, I want this phobia fixed, or I want this fear fixed overnight, or I'm not doing it. Well, then you're going to keep having it. It's going to take work. It's going to take like a process. You're going to have to do it. And again, like, you don't have to make it, you don't have to be a hero your first day. Period. You just have to do certain things and prepare yourself to give it your best shot. Whether it's just dipping your toes in the water, whether it's pedaling your bike around the neighborhood, whether it's running in a place you're not familiar with, just start exposing yourself. Ramp your way slowly. Don't expect it to happen overnight. And if it doesn't happen, you're not a failure. You just have a fear like everybody else. But there's perfectly ways, there are perfectly good ways to overcome it. Like we're going on a cruise like into this month into June, so I'm going to have to fly. And you guys know that I hate flying. And I've been listening to like all these audiobooks and like all these kind of things, like kind of get my mind right. And my favorite saying from this guy was like, you don't have to love flying. You just don't. You don't have to love it and you don't have to like it. But you can do it and it can be fine. And I think like with swimming and cycling and running and the sport, like we have so many things that we think it should all be perfect and catered and it should all be awesome. If it's not, then we shouldn't do it. And that's just like, listen, that's probably some of the most rewarding things in life you've ever done. You haven't had the red carpet rolled out for you. They've been challenging and stressful, and you had to work your way to it. And there's plenty of opportunities in this sport if you would just, again, address it, act on it, and try your best to make it happen. What are you laughing at?
Ever since you said I'm going on a cruise, all I could do is picture you on the side of a pool deck with a virgin margarita, naughty by nature, blasting and just jumping up and down on the pool deck on a Carnival cruise.
That couldn't be any more opposite of what I'll probably be doing. But yeah, because we got kids coming, so it can't be that exciting. Yeah, and I don't like to flirt with the virgin stuff because you never know if they're gonna fuck that up or not.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you got to go straight club soda and lime. And if it's in a tall glass, you're usually good. If it's in a short glass, you got problems.
All right, man.
Yeah, that was it. Hope you guys enjoyed today. Got something from it. Find something stressful to do this week, and then go do it. And again, don't have to be for 15 minutes, but make it for at least 5. As always, we love you guys, and we do appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com, and is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. We got a national camp coming up, so that is a closed registration. We do have Wisconsin camp coming into July, beginning of August. Great camp plan and a great turnout already. It's going to be an awesome group. Got a nice hotel block at our favorite hotel, the Best Western Inn on the Park. So yeah, check those out. And if you need coaching or are interested in finding what coaching looks like for you, you can also click on the coach tab and we'll help you make that decision. If you need anything from Mike, he is available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man.
Check you later.
See ya.